Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Ryan with Rigs of Death Metal, another episode of Rig Chat. Today, our guest is the legendary Karl Sanders of Nile. What is up, man?
How you doing, Ryan?
Doing fantastic. Man, we are definitely a platform for all the gear nerds around the world. And with the following that Nile has, I know plenty of guys. There is some coverage out there. I know you like to experiment and change some stuff out here and there.
Well, who doesn't? Who
Exactly.
doesn't?
Part of the fun, right? But why don't we just kind of go through like what your current live rig looks like?
Okay, all right. The current live rig. Mm, should I pull up some pictures and screen share some pictures? Would that be helpful?
That would be cool. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if we can do that. Share screen. Host has disabled screen sharing.
Oh,
Okay. So never mind.
okay.
We don't have to have fun, sexy things.
Sorry
We can
about
just
that.
talk about it. No worries. Current live rig. Marshall cabs. They're loaded with Celestian uh, Creambat 65s. Yeah. And there's angle heads on the leads and Marshall DSLs on the rhythms.
Okay. Nice mix.
Yeah, I really like the musicality of the angles,
Hmm.
and the Marshalls just have the
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's kind of
like
like
a technical term.
yeah. Sort of. I think they teach that at Full Sail. Yeah, it's a cool balance. You have a very sort of the compressed, refined, very articulate kind of angle, and then you've got the Marshall for all that upper mid range kind of scratch and old school sort of mean. Love
You
it.
got to have some mean. I mean, this is metal, right? So you got to have some mean. Got to have some.
Oh, for sure. Um, I've got to kind of demo sample a little bit your IR pack slash the Dine IR pack and two notes. Um, yeah, what would you say the creamback is sort of like your go-to, or is it just sort of like for live use, kind of the best of covering like the best middle ground for everything? Whereas in the studio, it's maybe this speaker for this specific thing, this one for this kind of thing.
Well, I used the creambacks in the studio too because
Right.
they hit that nice balanced zone of it's got some warmth, some roundness, and it's still got enough bite on it to where it does what I'm looking for a guitar speaker to do. So I use them everywhere.
For sure. Nothing wrong with that. Uh, I'm definitely a fan. I need to get some more IRs. I want to actually experiment with the real thing here now because everything I have is like super high wattage, and I'm kind of learning that's not always what you want for a studio setting necessarily. Like I got the 100 watt Celestians and a Mode 4 cab, and I don't know, wanting something with a little bit lower wattage so I can kind of drive the speaker more.
That was my experience. For a while, I had the Kerry King Celestion 100 watt model, whatever the number is on that.
Sure.
And it had a lot of power and it was a brutal speaker, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. Definitely could take a pounding, you know. Uh, but like you said, that's not always, everything that you need a speaker to do.
Right. Right. Um, Out of curiosity, just I've seen you like with some odd and end stuff like the grind stain and some studio pictures. Is there a we're all pretty familiar with the Nile tone, right? It's pretty instantly recognizable, and we can kind of go into minutia of that for people that may not know in detail, but just for my own morbid curiosity, is there like any kind of specific tone that you like to play with at home that might not necessarily fit into the Nile repertoire, like an HM2 tone or fuzz pedals, something like that?
Uh, not really. The pedal that I use at home to practice with is uh, the same model as the one I use live. Because I found when I was always like switching things up and doing lots of fun things, that there's always just a little period of adjustment. Oh, I'm doing this now. Oh, I'm doing this practice, but I'm doing this other thing. If I just do the same thing all the time, that's what my hands are used to doing. It's what I'm used to hearing. I know how it responds. Like if I dig in there, I know what it's going to do, right? So I found it more comforting. Like when it does what I think it's supposed to do,
Sure, sure.
it doesn't make me go, "Ooh, what's wrong here? What do I need to fix?" You don't want to worry about fixing things when you're in the heat of the moment. You want it to do what you can count on it to do.
Sure.
If that makes any sense. It's a little abstract.
No, absolutely. It'd be almost like somebody in a band who, and they're when they're not on stage, practicing with one guitar, sitting down all the time, and then they
Mm-hmm.
go on stage with a different guitar and standing, and it's a complete throw off, and your muscle memory's all off, and the
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, totally get it for sure. Um, you mentioned a pedal. What was the specific pedal? I don't think I caught the
Uh,
name.
the one I use for live and practice, it's a Boss GT001. Uh, but the patch I'm using in it is an emulation of the standard issue Boss Overdrive 1, the yellow pedal.
Okay. Oh,
Right. So
okay.
when I record, I actually use the old fashioned, Boss OD1 pedal.
Sure.
Uh, it was in the picture gallery, right, from the
Oh,
last
yeah.
studio thing, because that's kind of all I really want or need is just that kind of a simple overdrive. Just slam the front of the amp, and it kind of rolls off some of the flubby bass. Uh, so yeah, an overdrive pedal.
Absolutely. And man, there's something about like that specific boss that they work so well with Marshall or similar voiced amps, like just that British flavor. They don't have necessarily that same little mid hump that a like an Ibanez Tube Screamer does,
Right,
because the Marshall doesn't need it. Certainly not.
right.
Especially if it's like getting ran through any kind of V30 cab. Like that's just it's obnoxious amounts of mids.
Right. It's already plenty of them.
Sure. And going back to the Nile formula, always still the invader pickup, correct?
Bing.
Nice.
Let's see if we can zoom in there. Invader.
Hell yeah. Have you ever experimented with like any kind of variations on like the invader, trying to like tweak it to any certain way?
No.
Yeah.
That's, people have suggested things to me, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, well, I've been using the same pickup for like 30 years at least. So this one is working for me. Like there's so many like variables in life, like I don't know, is it gonna rain? Is a tour gonna get canceled? Is COVID gonna, destroy our industry, or whatever. Who knows what calamities may befall us. You can walk out the street and get run over by a car. So, you know, at least I know what this invader does, and I can count on it to do what I trusted to do. So it gives me a little bit of peace and comfort.
Sure. And I can kind of appreciate that too, because it's easy as, you know, guitar players who are gear enthusiasts and you like kind of delving into different tones and trying to resolve issues, maybe not even just for tone, but practicality's sake, but still knowing foundationally what needs to stay no matter what. Like it's pretty refreshing to hear because how many times do we listen to bands for years on end, our favorite groups, and drastically different sounding over the years? And sometimes not for the better.
Not for
Sometimes
the better.
they go way, way out there, and you're like, well, did they listen to this before they finalized it?
You like you just said, man. Your audience has certain expectations, right? And I don't believe it's possible for any one individual or group to be all things to all audiences. You know, I do one thing pretty okay, and that's good enough for me. I'm not tempting the universe for destruction or fate. I like trying other things, okay, but when I step out and I need to do something, I rather would work with what I feel comfortable and what is reliable and I
Yeah.
can count on. There's so many other things can go wrong, like during the show, you know, who knows if the monitors are going to work? Who knows what might happen? At least if your pickup is doing what you want it to do, if your shoe comes untied, well, okay, we can deal with that. But but my pickup, I needed to do what it's supposed to do.
Sure. And as far as some of the other consistent elements in your all's tone and setup, um, pretty much always drop A except for the early days, right?
No, the early days were drop A. I mean, if you
Oh,
went
okay.
early, like 1980 something,
Yeah.
before we discovered drop A. Well, okay,
Right. Um, but
I'm not always this comical. I'm just having a lot of fun. Sorry.
no, you're good. We're more than welcome. Um, but as far as string gauge, which like we were kind of chatting before we started recording, have the pack here. You definitely go for heavy, heavy bottom, super light top. Um, which how much experimentation did you go through to wind up where you're at now? To going from like baritone feel on the bottom to Ingve light on the top. Like,
Well, it was a little bit of experimenting. Yeah, I think if you don't go with a drop A tuning, if you don't have enough tension on it, it's not going to respond or stay in tune, and the notes will go sharp and flat and wobble all over the fucking place. And it's just harder to make your pick, stay on point when your string is wandering all over, going everywhere. So you gotta have enough tension down there.
yeah,
But leads, I like them to be fluid and to sing and to bend and, not to fight me. If I'm going to
right.
do some fighting, okay, we'll fight a power chord. Well, if we're going, okay, that feels like fighting. But when I'm soloing, I want to have it working with me
Hmm.
and not fighting it, so I
Sure.
can, be relaxed and stay in control.
Right. Granted, I probably don't favor all the time quite as light of a gauge as you do, which kudos to having the finesse to pull that off. Definitely like the heavier bottom, but I definitely go way lighter on the top than a lot of, buddies that I have or have spoken with about it. And I'll never understand the guys that try to say they want a baseball bat neck and super heavy gauges across the board and, all this. I'm like, and all I can think of is like, well, all you're doing is chugging on the low string and playing power chords. Sure. I mean, why
Right.
not? If you're just
Hmm.
heavy-handed and you're just riffing, yeah, sure, I could see that. Why not? Having like a rock solid foundation to just bang away on. But if you're trying to cram a bunch of notes into a certain amount of bars and you're doing a little bit more acrobatics with the fingers, I don't see how you really could.
That's so well said. Early on, I tried using like a 13, and it just wasn't for me. There's guys who can play with a high string that heavy, but it wasn't any fun. So I didn't want to fight it. I wanted it to work with me.
There's an old story. I assume it's true. I think it was Billy Gibbons telling it maybe, talking
Hmm.
about playing like just kind of jamming and hanging out with BB King. And
Hmm.
Billy notoriously played like 13s or 14s and for like standard tuning, I guess, and handed his guitar over to BB to try. And he's like, man, you're trying too hard. Like, and talked him into playing with lighter gauge strings after that. So I don't
Yep.
know. It's funny. Some of the you got some Steve Ray Vaughns out there that play with like 13s or 14s for standard or half step down, and you got Ingve who appreciates really awesome vibrato and doesn't want to lose it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Very well said.
Um,
Very well said.
what what would you say would be sort of like the inspiration for when you're dialing in a tone? 'Cause just as a big fan, obviously you lean towards Marshall or Marshall-esque voicings, um, which inherently a very mid-forward style of amp and gain structure. So you can get away with scooping some mids out, and it's still very much where you need it to be in the mix.
Right.
As you know, trying to discover the Nile sound or discover what works for you, like kind of where did you start off with, and what was like the catalyst for like, oh no, this is it. This is where I'm at.
Uh, that's a great question. Because there was an evolution, like, when Nile first started and we're in the rehearsal room, like 93, 94, working out what is this guitar supposed to sound like. But there wasn't any direct, like, okay, I want to make it sound like this, or I want to make it sound like that. It was just, okay, this is what I'm doing, and this is where we need to set the amp so that I can, hear what I'm doing, and, the power chord sounds like a big thunderous pyramid, and it's also got, enough attack on it to sear flesh off faces. Yeah.
Fantastic.
One of the things that really helps me is there's no knobs on my guitars. So the pickup is wired straight to the jack, which gives me a little bit hotter sound, but also a lot more like upper presence, just right out of the guitar into the front of the amp.
Sure.
I find it really helpful. Like if I play a guitar with a volume knob in it, it seems to be a more polite version of the
Sure.
same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always found it odd when guitar players would do the opposite and add like capacitors and things like that into their signal, like solder capacitor onto their tone pot or whatever. It's like, really? You're diluting it more? Like, you want to round it off even more? It's like, one of these days, I really want to try it as an experiment to capture a DI with a guitar that has like a volume and tone pot and everything, and then
Hmm.
take them out of the signal path and then record a DI straight pickup to jack to output jack. Super super curious to see like what the specs are on that because I've heard I've heard you say it before, but I've heard plenty of other people make the same mention,
Hmm.
just bypassing everything. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, definitely something I really really want to try because
Wouldn't it be awful if we tried that and we wouldn't be able to hear the difference if we objectively, scientifically listened to it and realized it was all up here? Wouldn't that would suck?
it would. I, it would, but just it makes sense though when you think about it, because you're because as the signal travels, it's going to taper off with everything that it passes through, right?
Correcto.
So, get rid of at least the pots. I was surprised when I saw that you went to two pickups. I'm like, oh, there's a switch now.
Right, right. Well, sometimes I like the neck pickup if I'm going to
Oh
play a
yeah,
like a singing lead, kind of
sure,
get that tone. So I like having the front pickup.
for sure.
It's got its uses.
Oh, what? This almost seems like a trail off, but it's still gear. What neck pickup do you favor? Is like a 59 or a jazz or what is it?
Most of the time it's the Duncan distortion, but sometimes
Oh,
it's Pearly Gates, the Billy Gibbons one.
okay.
I really enjoy that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've tried a few others, the Black Winter, the Nazgul. I even tried some Blackouts. But I really like just the simple combination. Like
Good.
anything that lets me like directly translate what's in the hands
Hmm.
right to what I'm hearing with no side detours. That's what I want to hear.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. It's yeah, I was super curious because the times I have heard you playing on a neck pickup, like doing sweeps or whatever, uh it's got what I'd like to hear in a neck pickup where it's rounds it off in a musical way, but it's still bright and bubbly enough to where it's articulate but smooth, which is a
Yep.
very, very, very difficult thing to balance, I've come to find out. Kind of like that Ingve neck pickup thing.
Man, him and Blackmore, Uli Roth, Robin Trower, man, those guys have great neck pickup tones.
For sure. It that kind of led me down the path of like experimenting with like single coils for a neck pickup and you know um getting closer, still not fully satisfied yet. Never ending,
Or were
right?
you ever satisfied though? If you play guitar, you're always like going, well, this could be a little better.
Right?
What am I doing? I should try this other thing.
Exactly. Um so what what would you say was sort of your initial got you interested in playing guitar in the first, like when you were wee baby Karl? Uh, what was it that made you, want to get into music?
Well, I started playing when I was 9 because I was in fourth grade. Guitar was an elective, and they had a group class. There were probably 20 people in there, and we played acoustic guitars, and I was completely awful, but it was so much fun. I loved it. Yeah, so that's when I started. And then when I was a teenager and I discovered, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, all the classic stuff, Cream, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck. That's what, like, that lit the fire. All that early stuff. Yeah. So by the time I was in high school and we discovered Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, there's no turning back.
Do you remember your first electric guitar by chance?
I do. It was an awful Encore Les Paul copy, and it was really, really bad. But me and my dad put a DiMarzio distortion pickup in it, and all of a sudden, it didn't even matter how shitty that Les Paul was. That DiMarzio distortion pickup turned it into a fire breather.
Nice. Do you did you have like a high school or even middle school band?
Yeah. With some friends of mine, and we were called Blonde Lebanese because the bass player and the drummer were of Lebanese heritage, and they smoked a lot of dope. So I didn't smoke dope, but I was the blonde guy, so they came up with the name Blonde Lebanese. Yeah.
Okay. What an eclectic background mix. I love it. So, kind of going back into another formative years question. Obviously, you're a big fan of Egyptian mythology and history and everything. When did that really start? Kind of like as far back as you remember, or a certain point in school, or a little bit later?
Well, it was always a casual interest. It really didn't kick into high gear until uh, when it was me and Pete and Chief, and we decided, okay, and we'll call ourselves Nile. And a few months later, I said, well, wait a minute. If I were listening to a band called Nile, what would that sound like? Right? So that kind of like set up a whole range of, stuff that naturally followed after, which was also, well, okay, if we're going to write metal songs about ancient Egypt, somebody's going to have to read up on it. Somebody needs to start, delving into it. So that kind of just fed, the whole thing. The more that I was, going to the library, reading stuff, the more interested I became.
Huh.
So it was kind of a fun process. I wouldn't have, guessed that's where I was going to end up. I didn't really strive to go there, right? I didn't spend all my life dreaming of, okay, one day I'm going to, do this thing and we're going to write songs about Egypt.
Yeah.
I just kind of found myself there and went, oh shit. I guess I better bone up. One of the stories from those early days was I went to my guitar teacher, who was a local jazz player, and said, dude, I need some chords that sound like ancient Egyptian guitar chords. And he kind of laughed at me and went, what are you talking about? There's no such fucking thing. Here, learn the Steely Dan song. And it seemed like a comical, flippant answer at the
Yeah.
time. But the song he gave me to go home and learn was Josie, which has a lot of parallel fourths and fifths moving in the chords. And I went, oh, I get what the fuck he's talking about. This modal sound with the fourths and the fifths, you can stack them, right? A stack of fifths becomes nines. A stack of fourths turns into an 11 chord. And it's very modal sounding. And you can get some really exotic and ancient kind of chords, with these fourth and fifth stacks.
Damn.
So I thought he was being a smart ass and making a joke, and he probably was, but it led to some really cool places because some of the chords that I worked out back then, are fundamentals of Nile songs now. Fourths, fifths,
Awesome.
different combinations of them. You can do all kind of stuff with it.
I have I've especially after like watching you in other interviews, uh admire your ability to take in influence and ideas from all these different places, but you, instead of just trying to do them the way somebody else has done them, you've tried to make it your own. And I've tried to kind of do similar,
Mm-hmm.
like take a Petrucci lead idea and make it into like a riff instead of a lead thing,
There you go.
And it's something I wish more people would do as opposed to just, well, I learned a bunch of riffs from my favorite band, so now I'm going to just try to write riffs that sound like stuff they wrote. You know what I mean?
There's pros and cons to that. You know, there's a lot of ways you can look at that. On the one hand, if I were to learn a Petrucci lead, even no matter how hard I tried, it's never going to sound like Petrucci. Even if I played the exact same notes, it's just not going to sound like John Petrucci. It's going to sound like Karl trying to play some John Petrucci ideas.
Sure.
But if you take some of this thing over here and this thing over here and this thing over there and throw it in the blender and you do it enough times, right? Sooner or later, the whatever is you will start, I don't know, coalescing, right? Because you're only a sum of the stuff that you put in. Right? It can't be any other way. Like that, what is that? You are what you eat. Well, musically, you are a sum of all the things that you take in and present back. So, whatever that means, I'm not sure.
No, I totally get what you're saying for sure. Um, some people I feel like maybe just when they digest and regurgitate said ideas, maybe just a little too close to the original idea, you
Hmm.
know? And instead of just kind of embracing what could be their own identity onto said idea, if that makes sense.
Well, nobody's going to pay me to try to play John Petrucci because it would just be awful. I would be a terrible John Petrucci wannabe. It would suck. So just by by just realizing that little kernel of truth can lead a person to go, well, what could I do that wouldn't suck?
Sure.
Let's try to do that.
Yeah. Um, Kind of going in back to songwriting. Um, do you ever have any kind of idea, at least musical ideas, probably not full-fledged songs, I would imagine, but just ideas that you have to kind of make a split decision between Nile versus maybe save it for one of your solo albums? Is there ever any crossover between any of those materials, or are they written very, very specifically for one or the other?
Well, I think it's pretty easy to tell if, like, because my two projects are so different
Sure.
sounding. One is, very extreme metal, and the other is very quiet and soothing, although they're both coming from the same brain. But I don't feel like they're confused. And I don't feel a sense of confusion when I'm going, well, this is an Al song and this is a Saurian song. it seems obvious to me.
Sure.
Yeah, as soon as I pick up the guitar, you know, it seems obvious to me.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. I think some people have more of a composition kind of mentality where the whole picture kind of comes to them in a sense, or at least the general idea kind of at once, and they
Hmm.
flush out the full thing at it, kind of all together at once. As opposed to, oh, I have a melody in my head, and then they just try to figure out what instrument would best suit that melody. Some people are a little bit more piece at a time. So I wasn't sure your process, but I think you do kind of strike me as more composition all at once kind of songwriting.
Well, on a good day, you know, I think it's wonderful when you do get the whole idea. Oh, I got it. I know exactly what to do. But it doesn't always happen that way. Just sometimes you have to take a stick and go in the bushes and beat the song out of the bush. Or sometimes you don't get it all at once. It's great when you do. And that's the myth that, we would all aspire to. But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes the path to a finished song can take a terribly convoluted path and journey before it actually becomes, what you were hoping it would be. Sometimes it isn't at all what you would hope it would be. Like, I have a great idea and I go to do it, and you know what? That's not a good idea. That's terrible. You start all over, but maybe, somewhere along the way, you get a little bit of an idea. Oh, I could do this with it. And if I throw this other piece out, we could go over there. And, before you know it, you have a piece of music that you didn't necessarily plan exactly like that, but okay, here we go. It'll be all right.
Um, what exactly is like your I guess method for writing guitar solos? Are you more carefully composed, or do you just kind of do enough takes to improvise and just do takes until you get one right, or does it just kind of depend on the song?
Kind of depends on the song. I think there's a lot of different ways of going about it, and different songs work out in different ways. Like, God, the ones that are fresh in my mind, I can't give out the song titles yet. Okay, there was the lead off track on the new record. It's very much a composed solo where I sat down and went, okay, here's the riff. It's going from here to here. And what's going to work here? Okay, this is going to work. And sometimes I just put the chorus on a loop or whatever section it is I'm supposed to play and just start playing. And I just keep playing until I hear something I like. And then I'll go, okay, this worked, and this worked, and this worked. Okay, now I see what I need to do. Like, it reveals itself
Yeah,
the more time that one is in it.
gotcha. Um, whenever you're playing, whenever you're playing leads live, is there a well, you probably switch to a specific head. Is there anything else in the signal chain? Like, is that when you kick on another overdrive or delay reverb? Just for fun.
Well, it's not just for fun. I mean, it is fun to throw some goop on the top of your
Sure.
lead tone, because you want it to sing.
Yeah.
Uh, for a while, I was using the Axe 2XL
Hmm.
to do effects. It's in like a parallel chain. It doesn't come back through the Marshall. It goes through the wet cabinets, which, like, the dry cabinets are on the bottom, and the
Yeah.
wet ones are in stereo on top. So when I kick on the lead channel, those top two come on. It's got all the glorious wet fun stuff. But I stopped using the XFX Live. I've been using a program called Gig Performer, which lets you load up VSTs and put them in and assign them to do whatever. So that's what I've been doing, because it's not actually going back through the guitar amp. It's just going through the wet cabinets and direct front of house.
Sure.
So the stuff that's coming out of the bottom drive cabinets is, just straight guitar, unvarnished, hideous. Like I sometimes wonder, gosh, those people that are standing in the front row with those dry cabinets right in their face, I wonder what their experience is, sitting through a show. Because where I'm standing, I hear all of it. I hear the dry ones and the wet ones, and it's fun. I've even got the wet stuff coming back in the monitor wedges, so that it's just a nice stereo field of singing guitar, right? So, yeah, Geek Performer. It's quite a piece of gear.
What BST do you load up into there? Just curious.
Well, I like the Lexicon Hall Reverbs. Got some Eventide stuff, Abbey Roads plates. There's Sound Toys, the Echo Boy.
Oh
It's
yeah.
got it's an old-fashioned tape echo kind of thing. So it works really well. What else? The Quantum Reverb. That's really fucking cool. It's got great room reverbs. Yeah. Normal stuff. I mean, stuff that you would use on your DAW,
Yeah.
right? That, it's also in my library.
Okay. I probably takes care of a lot of like the tempo issues that, for all the time-based effects, keeps everything kind of are you guys on a click? Or like
We
in
are on
ear?
a click. So
Okay.
there's also a MIDI clock that feeds the VST host that tells it, the BPM, no matter what song it is we're playing.
Sure.
It's already doing it. I haven't had to hit a tap tempo in 20 something years because the computer does it. So it does all my patch changes, right? So if I don't want to touch my pedal board, right? If I'm standing 10, 15 feet away from my pedal board, the patch changes are all on the live sequence anyway. So I can be playing, and where you would normally have to do some tap dancing, that's taken care of.
Sure.
So it's made singing and playing a lot easier.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's funny just how far we've come from the old days when you'd hear about like Dimebag Darrell and Troy Grady being backstage hitting all of his effects and even rocking on the whammy pedal for dime.
Now everyone can have that guy,
Right?
right? Now everyone has their own virtual guy doing their whatever needs to be done.
And I was just talking to another guest about this, but sorry. Playing guitar and having the band tight and everything and using in-ears is one thing, but having to play all this noise going on and then also having to do vocals or God forbid singing on pitch, like in-ears almost become a necessity, I would imagine. Right? I mean, I don't know. Well, I guess because in the beginning you were doing vocals and playing and probably did not have the in-ear system
Yeah,
back then.
those weren't invented yet when we
Yeah.
started playing. So I'm used to doing it. I actually hate the sound of my own voice when I hear it on in-ears. No. I don't want to hear it. It's awful. And I feel a little bit disconnected from the other guys in the band with the in ears. So I just went back to doing it old school.
Sure. Oh, really?
George has got the in ears, because he's got the click and
Hmm.
all his drums, in his in ears.
Yeah.
But nah, I just do it old school. It's way more fun, and this way I'm listening directly to George, and that's what I'm used to doing. So
Sure.
yeah. Also, you walk around a little bit on stage. You can hear different things. Like if I need to hear a little more of George, I just go stand back to my George. If I need to hear more of my guitar lead, I'll stand in front of the cabinet. If I
Right.
need to hear more of my vocal, well, I'll stay right up there by the vocal wedge. So I'm my own mixer just by where I walk around.
Sure. I did I've done a fill-in gig before where they were on in-ear monitors. Um, it's weird. It feels like you're in a bubble. It feels like you're in
Mm-hmm.
a bubble being observed and not necessarily like a rock or metal show, you know? Like
Yes, dude, that fish in a bowl. I'm in a bubble, and
yeah.
I don't like that. It's no fun. That's not why I started playing metal. I did not play metal to become a goldfish.
Yeah. No, it's not to be crude, but it is the condom of the audio world.
Yep.
It's just not the same. Um, but so what would you say as far as you still got time for a couple more?
Yeah, my next student is. I got a few minutes yet, so.
Sweet. Is there anything in the equation of the live performance that pretty much know what's always going to stay? Is there anything that you're like trying to look into something different just as a problem solver?
I got the quad core, uh, Neural DSP quad core.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I've been using that for my effects recently.
Okay.
Man, it's got a lot of in and out. Like you can route it a whole lot of different ways. So that's pretty fucking cool.
Absolutely. Those things
Yeah.
are like, I believe they're the most powerful modeler or anything on the market right now, just by like the processors that are in them.
I'm not using it for the amp modeling though. I'm just using
Sure.
it for the effects and to make routing nice and easy. 'Cause there's so many options with it. It makes life a little bit easier. It cuts
Oh,
out like
sure.
3 or 4 different pieces of gear, like my router, my switcher, my
Yeah.
sound sculpture, volume pedal thing. Yeah.
Do you are you still using the two notes captors for like a front of house sound for your just for
Yeah,
your
they're
tube
loaded with
heads?
my own cabs. Right,
Sure.
so it sounds so close. I can't tell the difference.
So
It's
cool.
it's that close. Eric Rattan could tell the difference though, right? When we did the
Okay.
captures, we did it at Eric Rattan's studio, right? And Eric loaded it up on his console.
Hmm.
This fader was the cab, and this was the next fader to it was the capture of that exact cab, right? And he would A/B them, and he A/B'd it enough times to where I lost track and I couldn't tell. And after a while, I couldn't tell. He could tell. He's got a fucking great ear,
Yeah.
but I
Oh,
couldn't
sure.
tell. Yeah.
Dude's got some of the best ears probably in the business. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if anybody's
Great
going to
guy,
be able to
too.
tell. Huh? I'm sorry.
Super great guy, too. Yeah.
I I haven't had the pleasure yet. Hopefully one of these days.
Dude, he is very metal and such a great, inspiring kind of guy. I can't say enough good things about him.
Awesome. Um, last question and let you go here. We always kind of like to close these out with What is your Mount Rushmore, like your top four death metal bands and or albums? Just whichever is easier to come up with on the spot.
Well, Immolation, Crisian, Old Morbid Angel, fucking Carcass. Dude, come on.
Hell yeah, killer. And I appreciate the distinction. It seems like an age group thing, I feel like, with Morbid Angel. I've come to just from my guests that I've had on. It's interesting. Well, Karl, thank you so much for taking the time to do this show with us. You've been a highly requested guest, so I'm sure the fans will really appreciate it. Um, Floor is all yours if there's anything you want to plug real quick before we jump off here.
Ryan, dude, it's been a blast. I've had so much fun hanging out with you. We should do this again sometime.
I would absolutely love that, man, for sure. But yeah, so and I've been seeing some clips recording for a new Nile record. Do we have
Ooh, yeah, it's already delivered. It comes out in August.
fantastic?
Yeah, we're pretty stoked about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Uh, as much as I love all the seminal records, Vile was that was honestly probably one of my top three Nile records. I mean, it was that damn good. Um, so yeah, I can't wait to hear this one, man.
Well, I can't wait to share it with people. We've had to live with these songs, for a couple years now. So we're ready for people to hear them. We've heard them plenty. It's time to share them.
For sure. Well, there you have it, folks. Look out for the new album come this August. And thank you once again to Karl and everybody. We will see you next time. See
Thanks,
you.
Ryan. Have a great weekend.
You too, bud. Later.